Hey, we're Kurt and Danette Share with the Broken for Better podcast.
Yeah, and together we're on a mission to equip and empower marriages. We want to strengthen families for everyday life.
Enjoy the episode.
Stresses in marriage. That's what we're going to talk about today. Dee and I have often talked about our own relationship and our own marriage, but we spend enough time talking with so many other couples that stressors in marriage are prevalent in a lot of our conversations.
I think every single marriage deals with stress.
No, because there's those perfect ones that they never fight.
Have you ever met a perfect couple?
They tell me that. I've met a bunch of people who tell me they're perfect. Those are the people I just wish I could be like behind their doors, not in a creepy way.
Why to like point out? Oh, like, there you go. You
are you liars. Y'all do fight. But stresses in marriage is big. Dee and I, over the course of nearly 28 years.
I know.
Get some of that.
28. That's right. Gosh.
You look like the day I met you too, girl.
Yeah, right. Thanks.
Thanks. We are going to discuss the things that are stressors in our own. We have some unique ones to us, but then we have some that have been stressors from day one, and many people have been. We're just going to kind of talk about processing out what it looked like for us, the areas we won in and the areas we failed in. So what would you say, like, if you had to just pinpoint our relationship, what's would you think the number one stressor is? Ooh, this is putting us on blast.
Goodness gracious.
It's been so hard and sucked so bad you can't even find one. You're like, there's so many to choose from.
I'm just letting you say, like, the greatest stressor. I would say if I looked at our marriage as a whole, over 28 years, we've gotten so much better, especially, the last few years as we've just focused on each other. I would definitely say overarching as a whole would be communication, which in itself could be its own topic. And I know that, but not communicating well. For me personally, being a people pleaser, I would tend to stuff like the way that I felt, or maybe not speak up for myself, or when I did, because I had stuffed for so long, then speaking up in an inappropriate or like unhealthy way, because then I just explode. So communication for me I would say one of our main stressors, especially early on. Like I said, we've gotten so much better. But yeah, that's a hard question. What would you say? What would you say?
If I'm going to be real.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Oh.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Well, you just know me that well?
Sex. Let's talk about sex. Yeah.
I would probably say intimacy was probably be our number one. Like for me.
Yeah. Very different approaches, very different like baggage we brought in, like all the things.
The traumas that came with it, the hurdles, and so it's been something that for many years has been the catalyst to a lot of arguments and a lot of fight, which is so bad and so terrible. When this thing that is supposed to be the most intimate thing that brings you together, and it's the thing that so many times has torn us apart. But if I'm gonna be honest, that's like the real communication. I would definitely say too, because for a lot of our marriage, I don't think we knew how to communicate healthy to each other. Okay, here's a good question. When did you get like you said, you stuffed and you stuffed and you stuffed. Do you remember when you got a voice?
Oh, I remember. Do you remember when I got a voice?
I mean, I always remember the day.
I pretty much remember the day too. Yeah. No, it was.
It's really not funny.
It's not funny
at all, but
no,
it's crazy that. I mean, it was an overnight. Break that down a little bit, because that, like I'm telling you, I had to process through that.
Well, so, he ends up meeting Jesus and changing his life around early on in our marriage.
Faithful, like faith.
Yeah,
I didn't meet him like.
No, not face to face. That'll happen one day, hopefully.
Hopefully, no, it will.
It will. No, I'm kidding. So years of health, we had started really having a healthy marriage and all these things. And so 8 years after 8 years?
7 years.
7 years. Yeah. It came out that at the beginning of our marriage, there was infidelity. And So obviously, for me, it felt like everything that we had learned together, everything that we had grown together with was a lie. Even though I know that now that's not truth, I still had to process my own grief.
Yeah.
I had to process my own trauma, which again could be an entire episode. But for me in that moment, I realized that I was choosing to walk in grace and begin to restore, and potentially, like, we had it was a long process. It wasn't like overnight.
Yeah.
But I was willing to try to forgive and walk in healing. And so I remember in that moment, something switched for me. And what I thought was going to be one of our hardest, it is one of the hardest things, but what I thought was going to break us actually set me free, because I had been for so many years trying to appease you and be the people pleaser that is just innately something that I struggle with. And at that moment, I realized, if I'm going to love you in your darkest moment, you're sure as heck gonna love me and you're gonna get all of me. And I want you to know all of me. And so you're gonna love the good parts of me, and you're gonna love the dark parts of me, and vice versa. And so there was a stripping in that moment, I think, of both of us. There was a stripping down of, okay, all the facades are gone.
Yeah.
We're going to know each other wholly and intimately. And from this moment forward, it's going to be 100% exposed. And that's going to be an exposure on your part and an exposure on my part. And it didn't come out that nicely, though.
You
that
packaged that
moment.
thing up real nice on this podcast.
Yeah, it didn't come out that nicely, but it was, there was a breaking there. Yeah.
I can think about being on the other side of that. Now, I was the one who had caused this pain. And, for y'all that didn't know that, know her, sweetest thing on the planet, loving, caring. Well, that's the way it's always been. I mean, just from day one. And I really took advantage, I think, of that person, the people pleaser, the keep peace, the, man, let's just navigate and let's just do this. Well, when it comes out and then we get to 2013, I remember just the, venom. Like, it was venom, and it was vile, and it was laced with expletives. Like, it was, there's a lot of pain. It hurt, of course,
healthy.
And in that moment, though I was seeing I was seeing a broken, and I knew, because at that point, I had known you since 93. So the 20 years I had known you, and I'm seeing a person I had never seen respond and act in a way that I had never witnessed before. But I was so broken of that my sin caused this pain, even though I was 7 years removed. Like, I was still so upset that I had caused this pain. And I remember having to go Lord, I need you to allow me to see her like you see her.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the eyes to see your daughter. She's hurting. How do I love that? And for a lot of individuals, that's not the prayer. You go through this problem, and now all of a sudden, you hit pain, and we're going to try to navigate this, and it's painful and it hurts. Well, you can't talk to me like that. And who do you think you are? And don't you know that I've changed? And don't you know I don't do that anymore? And it's just like this assumed forgiveness and no dealing with the problem.
Yeah.
And that wasn't our story, and it's not many others. I think for many times when you walk through these painful moments and you have these triggers, having the grace to allow someone to express themselves, seeing the good parts and seeing the bad parts, but having a grace to walk that out with them and then just continue to love them in spite. It was a tool that I had to come to terms with that thing.
What's so funny, though, is hearing you say that. I felt the exact same way about you. Like, you were trying to show me a grace because I was so hurt. The only way that I could begin to walk through, and that conversation, it's bigger than a stressor, right? Like, we're talking about stress as a marriage, but
that was adult. You literally, that could have cost your marriage.
It almost did, right? So for me, I think walking through that, I also had the same mentality of, okay, God, I need you to help me love him how you love him. And there's times when you walk through extreme moments of stress, whether it's an unhealthy child, right? We know families that walk through that stress, whether it's financial stress, whether it's trust issues, whether it's communication issues. There's moments when you walk through that as a couple. And I think the best way to get through it is to say, God, I need you to let me see my spouse as you see them. At least that for us was instrumental, because like honestly, when your spouse is walking through such high anxiety or fear or all the different things, it could be depression, it could be all the different things. It's so easy to want to be offended, and it's so easy to want to stake your claim or stake your position. And yet when you've got two people fighting together, that's they have to be on the same team in order to make it work.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? And I think the only way we got through those moments was by asking God to help us see each other the way he sees.
I mean, there were practical things we had to do,
Yeah.
but without, in that moment for us, without, without you finding a peace from Jesus, and without me being able to go, I'm going to love like you love. Yeah, I mean, that there was no,
Yeah.
but it was too, and this is a very big key in these stressful seasons. What posture and position do you bring to the table? So if in a stressful season, pride, arrogance, insecurity, fear, if that's the package that you present on the table, then you're going to get all of the behaviors that come with that package.
Mm-hmm.
When in these stressful seasons, you present humility, grace, love, unity, even in a stressful season, if that's the package you bring, then the behaviors are going to mimic that package.
Yeah.
And so it's constantly looking and going, okay, we see this stress. The problem is not keep the problem the problem. You're not the problem. We got to keep the problem, keeping it there. And in this high stressful season, coming with the posture to go, man, I'm going to come the most humility and the most grace that I can come, patience and peace. That this is the package I'm going to present so that we can have a real conversation.
Yeah.
Now, we have not always operated in that.
No.
And I don't think we do it in that. I mean, good Lord, 2 days ago, or 3 days ago.
Yeah, we had a big argument.
Yeah.
We did. And that's life.
And it was over communication.
It was.
It was over. I didn't like the way she said something, made me feel a certain way. She thought she said it great. And you find, and it's crazy. And this is what's so funny to me. We can talk about this stuff in an office. We can get credentialed in this stuff. We can have accreditation. We can have all the labels on anything. And in 4.2 seconds, all of it can be out the window. And two people that talk about this every single day are now looking at each other, and we're on Mach 12.
Yeah, but realizing that we also have the tools to bring it back down, and be there for each other. What I want to highlight is, I think when someone thinks of stress and they think of any one of these issues, whether it's sex, whether it's trust, communication, any one of these stressors, I think often we always see it as negative. And when I look back at our darkest moment as a couple, obviously not talking about grief and all that, I'm saying just stressors with each other. Whenever we work through it and we come back on the same page, we actually grow so much closer together. And I think we all think when we get married, it's, happy, it's rainbows and butterflies, and we want to keep that. We want to make sure we keep all of that, which would be beautiful if you could. But outside forces, outside things happen, sin can enter in, financial stressors, all the different things that come against us as a couple. We think that they're all negative, but we actually have grown so much. That's why we're so much more in love 28 years later than we were when we said I do. I felt like I knew you so intimately then and had no idea how I know you so much deeper.
Yeah.
And every day, every year, we grow deeper into each other. And so I don't think it should be seen as a negative. I think realizing when we know how to process out, we're all going to fail. We're all going to have stress.
Yeah.
So how do we process well?
Yeah. And I'm just going to rewind right back a few days ago. because it was so like real to us. And I know you don't want to talk about it, but I do want to talk about this. We got there, and I think that's what I love, and this is what we encourage, and this is where all couples have to analyze, how do we deal with stress? Because there have been seasons in our life where we would go days without speaking.
Mhm.
Like our home was cold, and we talked because we had to get the kids somewhere.
Yeah,
You and I weren't communicating. We did like basic, this is what we need to say today, and that was it.
yeah.
So having come from that to a few days ago, being able to go 0 to 100, but in the same car ride,
Yeah.
processing out,
Mm-hmm.
apologizing, seeing perspectives of other people, and then landing at the front door of where we needed to walk into.
Right.
Like, I think that's where, for me, if I were, I'm most proud of. I wish we were a couple that never fought. There's got to be couples out there that never like. It's probably fairy tale-ish, maybe, or maybe
I can't imagine, unless like it was like a Stepford wife like scenario. I just can't. I think there's
got to be something,
we're
right?
two humans. No, every couple.
I mean, I feel like, I don't know. If you're a couple that never fights, will you just put it in the comments? And we just want to meet you and just learn your ways.
We're gonna invite you onto the podcast.
Yeah. So that all your neighbors can go, we heard them. They fight.
They fought just last night.
You know, I wish we were like that, but I love the way we have it now, that we can get there, process out, and it helps us better. We saw each other different. Maybe not that night, but the next day we saw it, because then we even had deeper conversation as to why did that happen? Like, why did that happen? We care. And I think that's for a lot of it. Do you care about the stressors in your marriage?
Mm-hmm.
Do you care to make them better? Do you care to work on yourself? Why did you get stressed in that moment?
Right.
Why did I get stressed in that moment? What did you not like? What did I not like? And then let's be open and honest and vocal enough to go, well, I don't like that. I don't want that to happen again. I mean, you're my best friend. I don't like there being that tension.
Yeah.
And I don't like us, but we live in a fallen, broken world where we're trying to put food on a table. We're trying to meet everyone else's needs. We're doing all these things. And sometimes, I'm going to like go off here. I just got this word picture of, if you go play in a mud puddle, you're going to come out muddy. And so you have to take a shower to wash the mud off.
Right.
And for us, sometimes, when we avail ourselves so much for others, and we're taking off the record phone calls, and we're in the counseling center, and we're doing all these things, sometimes we got mud on us.
Yeah, you end up picking up so many other people's offenses and mud and just gunk, right? Because you're dealing with life and other people's hardships and stuff.
And it's not like we like it, but that's what we realize. Like, man, honestly, I had a very hard day and a hard conversation, and my heart hurts. And I'm just bringing in a quick trigger, and like, man, this couple told us something that then brought something up from our past that was a trigger. There's all these kind of mud that, like, you and I have to continually, like, just continue to wash that. In my house, I'm like, we have to continue to take showers together. I'm like, that's not bad. That could be good.
I bet you would like that.
But I mean, it's for our health, obviously. But we have to continue to just cleanse ourselves so that we can present the greatest side of ourselves to each other.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely.
Well, that's all the communication one. You want to break down intimacy that way?
I mean, we can.
We can.
Absolutely.
Listen, we won't break it down that thick, but I will tell you, because it, and I think this is one that, even when I said what's been ours, and I was like, oh, I know ours, and you went, oh, I know it. I think this is the intimacy stress is not one that people like to discuss.
Right. Yeah.
Even when when we're meeting with people, it's these roundabout things. Well, we don't communicate well and we fight all the time and they do nothing around the house and they hit all these like outlying things, which are all major things.
Right.
Great. But then in conversation, it's like, okay, we've talked about all of these. How's y'all's intimacy life? Like, how are y'all? Oh, no, that's non-existent.
Right. Yeah.
And the truth is, like, we want to talk about all these other things, but then at the core, the thing that really God created for two people to become one in this, like this soul connection, we don't want to talk about that. And there's so much of it there. Now, when I was unhealthy, that was our stress. Even when, like you live a very unhealthy life in that regard, you give your life to the Lord. Well, there's definitely some like, okay, God, we need you to rewire some things.
Some healing.
Right, there's some healing that has to happen. Like there's some traumatic things, some things that, you lived your whole, the last 10, 20 years of your life that's been part of your world that has now become normal, and I've taken them out on you and things of this nature. And it's like, okay, now God, we need you to heal this. And it created major tension.
Well, because there's healing on the other side that needs to happen as well. So you've got the healing that you have to do, changing your mindset. Then the spouse that has walked through trauma and walked through, feeling it like misused or feeling, they also have to walk through their own healing. And so you have two people. And what we often do is we point fingers. Well, you need to work on you. Like, you are messed up in your mind. I'm good. And realizing that, no, I need to do work on my part. You got to do work on your part, and meeting in the middle. And what we often see, most couples, you've got one that's like, well, it's not what I want, so I'm just going to disconnect. It's not, it's not how I want it. It's not whatever. And then you've got another person that's like, that's all they want, so I'm going to disconnect, and I'm going to use it as, I'm going to hold it against them, right? Or use it as like, as a payment resource. And so you end up having very unhealthy conversations and stress around what should be one of the most beautiful gifts of God that he literally created for us to be close to each other, and we use it and weaponize it. And so when we realize, man, how do we have these conversations to be able to give freely to our spouse and receive freely?
How do you, okay, so if that's a stressor, how do you feel we begin to navigate that world?
I honestly think if that's the one stressor that you're most concerned about, like, let's just say typically in our coaching room, we see that that's more the male desire, not always, but often. Right. And so what we end up having is they come in and they're like, man, our issue is we don't have sex enough, right? And every single time without fail that we've had a conversation, the female's perspective is different. Well, it's because of all of these things. I think if we end up saying, man, this is so important to my spouse, I'm going to start focusing on how I can be closer to them intimately. The spouse focuses on, how do I hit it out of the park with these other things? My wife has been saying they want to feel closer to me emotionally. They want to feel closer to me spiritually, but I don't give her access to that part of me. I just want the physical. Well, that's just, I don't believe, you take that word intimacy, right? And obviously we're talking about sex right now. And in the Big C church, we always use intimacy because it's taboo to say sex, right? We're talking about both. So how do you get sexually close and physically close? That intimacy word's so big because it should be both ends.
Okay, so that's a tool. Excellent. Love that. And you're right. I agree with every bit of it. What about for us? What did that look like when you and I had to navigate that?
Is there like a right or wrong here?
There's not a right or wrong.
Oh,
I'm just saying we gave a tool. Hey, this is what we did on the communication piece. So,
I really think that's what we did, though. I feel like for us, instead of it becoming, I think you, instead of saying, I want to make this about sex all the time, you started loving me in different ways.
Yeah.
You began to be vulnerable and transparent in every aspect, which made me be more vulnerable and transparent physically.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, I was going to say, I mean, just absolutely remember being able to finally have these open, honest conversations.
Right.
About like just sex, because intimacy to me really wasn't even a thing, honestly, at that point. But I remember having like the freedom to finally go, look, I'm like this because, man, this is like a desire, and this is where I'm at, and this is what I've always thought, and this is what, like, I'm gonna tell you this. So here it is, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to, like, verbally process that out with you to go, oh, okay, this makes sense, and this makes sense. And I feel like in my earlier years, the more that I kept our intimacy inside my head, and I'm having all these crazy imaginary conversations in my brain,
Yeah.
and not having real conversations, like, things just get muddied up, and I conjured up all these reasons why you wouldn't, and why you couldn't, and why you would never, and why we would never, and like it just get all messy up here. So I remember being able to sit and have these real conversations to go, like, this is my desire, and you going, oh, okay. And sometimes, wow, why is that a desire? I don't know why it is, but having these real conversations
Yeah.
allowed us to be able to, it gave me a space to be able to go, okay, I don't have to keep this as a major stress.
Mm-hmm.
This is my best friend. Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I'm so, like, always banging that, man, have the hard conversation. Be willing to have the hard conversation.
Yeah. I think one of the statement that you said when you said, if it's an imaginary conversation, it is, what's the word that you used? It's
Demands
a real conversation. And we use that tool so often.
Shout out Tito Diaz, by the way.
Shout out Tito Diaz. We use that tool so often because it doesn't matter what the stress is in your marriage that you're facing. So often the stress is multiplied because we don't move it from here to here, and we keep it inside. We keep it internally inside, whether or not it's in our hearts and our brain. And we expect our spouse to know what we're thinking. We expect our spouse to be on the same page as us, or we feel as though they're so drastically different than us that we don't want to share where we are. And so having those real conversations, no matter what the stressor is, more often than not, they're also feeling a stress regarding that same subject too, maybe just differently than you are. But I think that tool is so, so, so powerful.
What stresses you out in life?
Oh,
just one thing. I know this is real long.
Boy, that was
she
not
said,
okay.
Boy.
Gosh, and if anything's wrong with my family.
You don't even like the thought of something being wrong.
I'll literally cry to see.
That is true.
I know.
And honestly, that was even before our story. Your family has always been that way. It is definitely heightened in the last 2.5 years, obviously.
Yeah. If one of my kids are stressed or one of them aren't well, and like I can't like think on anything else until I know that they're okay.
Yeah,
so it's like that's, and I think that's probably a lot of moms. Maybe not all moms, but I think that's a lot of moms. And I think even, when you bring kids into the picture, and just the way God created men and women, and obviously that's such a hot topic, with gender identity, all of that. But there is a difference in how women are created. And so it's literally scientific. When you give birth, your child like leaves part of his DNA or her DNA in your body. And so people talk about, that maternal instincts and how do they know? And there's like literally this connection that I know is God given. And so it's very difficult, especially when you're young, married, and you've got a little one, and realizing that difference between mom and dad and how like in tune you are to that little one. So when they're hurting or they're not well, it owned me. And so I had to learn how to like allow God to work on things that I'm not in control of. But that was a real big stressor for us early on.
I remember not only a stressor for you because it stressed you out.
It stressed you out when I
stressed me out.
When I was stressed.
Oh,
right.
And I'm like, man, move on. Like, who cares? They'll be fine. They'll get over it.
Yeah.
Never could I value the fact, like I never saw value in you. Now, mind you.
Yeah.
I can't say always, and I'll never say never, but potentially some of them were unhealthy. The times you stressed.
Oh,
you didn't need to stress.
Well, it's worry. Most of it's worry, right? And I think it's Levi Lesko who says worry is putting faith in the wrong thing. And so I was putting faith
Yeah.
in, outcomes and
So sometimes it's, sometimes like those stressors, I should have come along and valued where you were at because they were real things.
right.
Um, I'll never be like one of the greatest ones that I finally got on board with was we we weren't real sure if Logan was going to graduate. We're doing the best we could with this thing.
Right.
And I remember on the education piece, you really stressing about this. Like, we got to do this and man, math is his problem. And I like math. She's like, Kurt, I need you. I'm like, he's gonna be fine. No, Kurt, like I need you. And I could never get on board until finally it was like, grab me by the ears and go, this kid may not graduate. I'm like, oh, hold on, let me do this. And I remember coming alongside and really taking this stance. And now, in our life now, I'm very more in tune because it's become one of my greatest things now of like, okay, I want to make sure not that everything's perfect because I love when our kids grow. They grow through stress too.
Yeah.
So now they're just older, just helping them navigate this from a coach's point of view.
So mine was definitely more like the kids. I felt that stressor more, which obviously affected you. What's an area that you felt a stressor more that I was just like, it'll work out, that it would stress? Money. Yes.
Oh, you already knew the answer?
I knew the answer. I was just waiting to see if you knew the answer.
Not even a question.
You would always stress about money, and I would always be like, it'll work out.
I mean,
like,
look, I kid you not, this one, forever. And I'm only like, no, you don't understand. We've got $18.72.
And I'm like, so we can afford a Happy Meal.
Yeah,
Let's go do it. I'm
no,
like,
we can't afford no Happy Meal. What are you talking about? We're not going out. We got $18.
I don't know why but
forever. But you've always said this, which I never believed it until we actually almost had to do it. You've always told me, Kurt Andrew Scher, I will live in a box under the bridge with you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know that I can trust you. And I just want to know that you love me. That's it. You've always said that.
Which maybe not all women will say.
I don't live in no box. I've got enough friends.
Box.
Somebody better let me move it.
We at least have this couch, sure.
Except it's too heavy. We can't carry it around.
Yeah.
Now, one of the areas that you stress over that has caused another major tension, and I think this is for a lot of guys, is health and medical situations. Like me worrying about my health. I don't worry about my health. You worry about my health, right? And because I don't give 2 cents about it, it's created major problems for a lot of years. I have high. Well, you don't want to talk? You got nothing to say?
No, I'll talk about it. I'm like,
I don't think you need it. No, actually, I think we need to skip.
Let's talk about it. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
I
put in the comments, hey Kurt, go get checked out. Just somebody, just hit us up. Hey Kurt, go get that blood work done.
And I'm like, listen, like it's been appointed. It's already written. My day, like God knows, I'll stand before Jesus.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just
but I have really tried. I'm going back to humbling myself. I truly don't care, honestly. I'm going back to humbling myself to honor my best friend. And so some of that being, okay, if this is a major, like if this is really making you feel the way you feel, disrespected, not cared about, then I'm going to change that. Like there are things I can do. So I'm like, I go to the doctor. You know what I mean? Let's go get the blood work done.
Yeah.
Then you go get the blood work done. The doctor's like, hey, your kidney's shutting down. I'm like, oh, dang, she was right. But it's kind of like, humbling yourself. And I guess that's what I would encourage anyone. Take your stressor. They're going to happen. Talk to those people that don't fight. And what you're going to find out is they've learned to have humility and grace in the midst of these stressors. What hills are you truly going to stand there and are you willing to die on? And what hills could you get off of and go, man, maybe I have a trauma past or I have a trigger that's caused this to be more of a thing than it really is.
Yeah.
Let me just not die on this hill.
Well, at the end of the day, I think stress boils down to what? It's either going to be fear, it's going to be worry, it's lack of trust, or things that are beyond our control, right? And when we don't communicate, that fifth one is if we're not communicating about the things that are really alarming our heart, then we end up in a very unhealthy place as a couple. And so no matter what the stress is, being able to say, hey, we're on the same team. We're openly communicating about it. We're not going to allow this to own our relationship or our home life. We're going to move forward together as a team, hand in hand. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but we're on the same team. That is a totally different feeling than feeling like you're fighting a battle on your own. And I think so many people feel as though they're fighting a battle on their own. And so having those conversations when you're not in the intense moment and saying, hey, let's make sure we're on the same page, I think is so important.
I also, being willing to know what you don't know and be okay with it. Having conversations even today, it's like there are some things in life that you don't know because you've never been there before.
Right.
And if you've never been there before, going in with these open hands to go, wow, I don't know the right response. And if in your world you grew up and you never saw stress handled properly in your home growing up, well, then you probably don't really know how to handle stress in your now home.
Right.
That baggage that you've brought in as a child, you carry in. You have two people that brought in baggage, or two people that brought in hurt, or two people that, two people that bring in these pasts that go, hey, now we're going to figure out this together. So just because it hasn't always been healthy doesn't mean it always has to be unhealthy.
Right.
Sit down, breathe, get coaches to come alongside and go, look, how is this? Why did it blow up so fast? What happened? What's triggered? Find the root of things. And now let's get that root healed and be able to move on.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
You want to talk more stressors? Let me just go over this real fast. Real fast.
Okay.
I thought this is very interesting. I pulled up a list. Biggest stressors in marriage: communication, sex, finance, intimacy issues.
We just nailed them all.
Serious
Look at
illness, children.
Yeah.
That's a whole one we didn't even.
We did talk about that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's probably multiple. Some
yeah.
Children, some doesn't want children. Death in a family, disrespecting boundaries. That could be a big one.
Yeah.
Health problems, job loss.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just reading down a list.
Okay. I feel like this one's going to be accusatory at me.
Health problems, job loss, premature ejaculation.
Oh my gosh.
Trauma.
What?
It's the biggest stressor.
What? Would that not go with the sex one? That's
apparently
so
not, because sex is
weird.
right above it. So I don't.
What kind of list are you looking at?
It's the Google list of
I'll let you take that one. No, I'm just kidding. I think we did a good job. I think we did a good job covering over the list. But yeah.
Listen, open, honest, be willing, be available for vulnerable conversations.
Yeah.
Don't let little things become big things.
Right.
And if you have big things already, bring someone along to help those big things be broke down, truth be seen, stop believing lies, and then navigate healthy. Your tomorrow does not have to look and sound like your yesterday.
That's right. Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, we encourage you, check us out on all of our socials at Broken for Better for more ways you can be plugged in.
Yes, and if we can help you or your family with anything like coaching or other resources, please connect with us at brokenforbetter.com.